the Henry vacuum cleaners. I think the motor was the same motor as one of those. I only found out about that is when we had to have it repaired once. I think the guy let it slip home with the phone. So it was kind of based around a Henry vacuum motor.
The Henry Hoovers are massive, like.
Yeah.
The Henry Hoovers are pretty good at vacuum, so that was pretty good standard. Welcome back to the Sports Dentistry podcast. How was your weekend, Umar? Did you feel powered up by Philips?
I was very powered up by Philips. Yeah, no, it was good. It was a good weekend. It was nice and chilled. We didn't really do too much, to be honest with you. It was just coming into nice autumn feels. Temperatures definitely dropped quite a fair bit. There was quite a lot of sport on TV, so I managed to watch quite a lot. There was the Ashes Rugby League. There was the Formula One. There was the darts. Lots of football. There was plenty to keep me going over the weekend. What about yourself?
Yeah, I got quite enough. Watched a bit of sport for a nice meal on Saturday night, but the clock's changing. We can really feel winter's come in. Watched a good bit of the rugby and also watched Brazil beat England in a friendly soccer match. The women, yeah, and to be honest, I wouldn't have watched it only it was on like ITV. It was like one on the main channel, so it's great to see that exposure that they're getting, and hopefully that really starts to keep building momentum for the women's game.
But we've talked about it in terms of how many different sporting broadcasters there is, and you have to pay for everything. The fact that it was on terrestrial TV is great, and that's what captures the imagination of the public when you're watching live sport of that caliber. And that's what caught the nation in 2005 with the cricket Ashes, and also with kind of FA Cup football. When it's on terrestrial TV, you just get a lot more people watching it. Talking about the hours going back, nothing beats having an extra hour in bed, though. I think that's probably one of the highlights of the year, when the hour goes back and you just get an extra little hour in bed and you're thinking, oh, that is fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. As long as you go to bed to make the most of it, which I didn't. So, well, the clocks had already changed by the time I went to bed Saturday night, unfortunately. So.
Well, I guess that from the radio silence again after several hours, and then you just peek in with 15, 20 messages back to back. Then I know you're awake again. You've had your caffeine and you're ready to go.
So I had a good chat with Lauren last week. It was great to get the launch of Philips supporting the podcast, and it's really starting to kick off. You know, we've put ourselves under a bit of pressure and it's coming together. We've got great support now with Ian and Philips, and it's really moving forward. And we've got more exciting news coming up, where we're talking this week with the EF4SD, and we look like we're going to be collabing with them for the conference. We've already spoke about doing a live pod from there, but with bigger plans for Dusseldorf.
I think so, and we were lucky enough to have a good chat with our friend Thanos, and just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, I think, and the fact that they want to get us involved and to give us the exposure is great news. It means we're obviously been doing something right with the interview techniques that we've had and the people that we've had on. And the good thing about EA4SD is they've got so many different people coming from so many different parts of the world. And I think we'll be in a great opportunity and a great situation to be able to actually ask the delegates and ask the speakers some interesting questions, and to be able to really shout from the rooftops what exactly it is that's been going down at EA4SD and build to the future. We know that the conferences are every couple of years, with this one now being in Dusseldorf, but it does mean we need to get our skates on with regards to getting the equipment and everything else that goes with it in working order for when we're there, because you obviously arrive a few days before me, so I'll be messaging you thinking, have you got this, have you got that? You got to make sure that we're all good to go. But I'm excited because we've put quite a lot of work into it today, and we did mention before that this podcast has only been going since March this year. And yes, EA4SD is one big thing coming up. We do have quite a few other things coming up as well. Again, we can't really touch on that at the minute, which we're working on that in the backgrounds, but I'm really excited. I'm not nervous yet, but I'm excited.
And we did put in the clause. We did put in the get out of jail clause, which is if Thanos doesn't wear a kilt, then we don't have to uphold our responsibilities. So that is the clause. So
That's
Thanos has to don the kilt come Dusseldorf for the podcast to fulfill its side of the
exactly right.
bargain.
I have asked him for his waist side and his inside leg size, and I've yet to get a response. So Thanos, I know you're listening, my friend. I'm still waiting. That kilt will look good on you. Before you know it, we'll be there and we'll be in the thick of it. And we're just going to have to deliver, John. We're just going to have to deliver the goods.
Yeah, it'll be good. Now, I'm looking forward to it. I think the latest update is there's representatives from 29 different countries going to be there and over 200 registrants at the moment. So it's definitely going to be a fantastic event. And with the link in with the sports medics, it's always great to be able to work that collaboration and really build forward it. So definitely looking forward to it. I still have to have a wee search to see if there's any sporting events going on around then. I do if I get time, want to slip down and see the New England Patriots flag football setup that they have there, because from the socials it looks pretty good. And we'll see if there's anything else going on at that time. So I'm forward to it. Still a little bit nervous about the temperature because I don't like to wear coats. I don't like to wear sleeves. So
This time I'm not going to give you my jacket, because you remember I gave you my jacket last year in Edinburgh. I will not even go down that road. What happened when you had it on when we were walking from the bit on the Saturday morning when you and I met to the restaurant along Princess Street, and then Sione Tupuletau is sitting on the Scotland rugby captain is on the corner, and you just walk past him in my jacket.
I think it took an allergic reaction to wearing a Scottish coat jacket.
Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, but we all know that you like your tight-fitted tops, and the less clothes you have on, the warmer you feel. I don't really know how that works, but I can't imagine Dusseldorf being warm in the slightest. Just going back to the point you made about Philips, obviously we are really kind of privileged to have such a big brand come in and help us. And I've been speaking to a few people kind of over the weekend, and friends of mine and who are dentists as well, and they were like, I can't believe you managed to get such a big brand back you after such a short space of time. And I said, what do you mean? He was like, because, they'll want to know the numbers, they want to know how many people are listening from all over the place and what other countries and etc. So I goes, yeah, but we've got all these numbers. We've got these numbers that we look at from Spotify, from Apple, and from Elite2, and the number of different countries that are listening in, and the quality of people that we've had on from all sorts of different backgrounds. And it just goes to show you that people who have come on have been willing to come on because they've obviously felt that we're going in the sort of direction that we want to take sports dentistry. And I think even the people that we've got lined up to come on speaks volumes too. And we just continue to build, continue to seek out other sponsors, and hopefully they'll be listening. And if they want to get involved, we'd be more than happy to have more people help us. But just want to take the opportunity to say thank you to Lauren. Her pod was very well received. A lot of people were very surprised as to just how knowledgeable she was. They didn't actually realize her background in terms of how much she actually brought to the table. And again, you and I, when we spoke to her that night, were surprised too. And that's great because it gives you an opportunity to meet people like that. And we know that it's people like that who take a punt and who believe in other people that make successes. So we want to say a heartfelt thank you to Lauren, and we will continue to build on that relationship when it comes into 2026.
Yeah, definitely. And you can tell the difference. I always find it difficult. Not so much, but like when you're talking to like representatives sometimes of dental companies and they don't have that dental knowledge, and you're talking to them about different products, and they're just rhyming off lines that they've been taught, and you can't have an in-depth conversation with them about the science behind it or the technology and things like that from a dental perspective, just because they haven't lived and breathed it. But it's completely different when you have somebody like Lauren that has that knowledge and is representing your brand. So it was fantastic to be able to shine a light on that for her, and how important it is then for her to be able to promote the Philips because she knows the benefit of it. I always find that easier. I remember working in a practice in Australia. I know some dental practices can get a little bit competitive. Dentists can get a little bit competitive, especially when you have maybe like an owner that comes down very much to the business side of things. And I remember when I was out one night, we were out on a social night, everybody was out. It was in like a small mining town, so there wasn't a lot to do. So we used to go out for a meal or something. And after a few drinks, one of the dentists going, just because you're a really good salesperson. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not really a good salesperson, but if it's a product or if it's something that I believe in, then it's easy to sell because you're just recommending whatever is best. And I think that's when it comes down to the same as the likes of Philips Sonicare. We know that this is one of the best brands and the best electric toothbrushes on the market. So it's really easy, not so much to sell, but we're sort of recommending it because we know that it's useful and it's really good for helping our patients have good oral health, making it easier for them for their oral hygiene routine at home. So I know I always get that, like dentists are a little bit like salesmen, as you don't like to hear that phrase because it's not really like that. But if it is products that you believe in, and if you believe that's the best treatment type, then you're not really selling it. It's more like a recommendation. Have you ever got that at any of the practices that you have been in? It's like a sort of sales sort of focus.
Yeah, well, I think dentistry is kind of going towards that in terms of a lot of the people that you see now on social media, and it's not so much they're trying to sell what they're doing, but they're showing a lot of their work, and basically that sells in itself, right? So maybe from what you're talking about back when you were in Australia, it was more people would have to try and physically sell their products because potentially at that time there wasn't really a lot of before and afters. There wasn't a lot of photography and there wasn't a lot of showcasing of cases, whereas now there is. Now it's like you don't really need to say much. All you need to do is show a before and after of a similar case to what you're about to treat. I think that's what I kind of find now, certainly here, is you still get patients shopping around and they're quite, most of them are quite honest about it, and they say, look, I'm just here to see, firstly, do I like you? Secondly, what's the price like? And thirdly, can we work together? And I kind of saying to them, look, I agree with you. I think it's got to be a two-way thing. I'm not here to sell you anything. It's like, this is what you've got. This is what I can see. This is a similar case. These are our fees. Now it's up to you. I don't really like that kind of, you need to come and see me, because that's not the sort of person that I am, or the personality that I have. But I do feel that things have changed now, and I think how things have been going forward and how things will continue to go forward will be that. And price is a big thing now. Obviously, we're living in quite a difficult time and financially all over the world, really. So, cost and finance does come down to it. But ultimately, I just like to say, kind of be yourself, trust the products that you're using. Like you said, you'll tend to lead on to patients kind of what you've used and what you feel comfortable with. But you know what makes it even better is that if you're a dental healthcare professional, you can get a free Philips Sonicare 7100 toothbrush.
Use it for yourself.
All dental healthcare professionals love free stuff. So what better
everybody
way?
loves free stuff.
What better than to entice them in and getting a free toothbrush? And that's what Philips are all about. So big up Philips.
And talking about great products, and especially from people from the conference, our guest for this episode is another one of people that came and showed off their products at the conference. And when it comes to custom fitted mouth guards, thermoformed, gold standard, they don't get much better than these products from Access Dental and our good friend Chris Golze. Definitely haven't pronounced it right.
Chris Gazelle, Chris Gold. Yeah. Do you know, I was, do you know, well, you can ask him when you speak to him if that, how do you pronounce his second name? I said to you, the amount of dental forums that there are and the amount of people that ask questions about mouth guards and about what should I write on the prescription, what should I send them, what do they need to have? In this day and age, it should be pretty straightforward about what you should have to say. But obviously that isn't the case. And when we saw Chris's work firsthand at the conference. It was exceptional. The quality and detail that goes into it, you can see he loves his craft. And we've had the pleasure of speaking to him and engaging with him quite a fair bit on the podcast because he tends to listen to most of the shows. But that was my pressing question to him. Can you tell the listeners, from you as an experienced mouthguard creator, what do you want to receive? Is it analog, digital? What do you want people to write on the prescription? Because we want to demystify it. And we want to make it very simple for people to be able to make top quality mouthguards for not just the elite, but also for just your recreational patients. Because there's so many people coming asking for mouthguards. All you have to look at is look at his designs and just see how cool they are and how funky he can make them. And actually, interestingly, one of my friends had sent me a screenshot because I'd commented on a post saying to Chris, why did they take down your last post, Chris? He said, I've got no idea. My mate sends me the screenshot, circles one of the mouth guards, and in big capital letters with a yellow background, it says, Tiny Dick. And I was like, okay, that's maybe why it was taken down.
Yeah. What I really want to know about that is was that person's nickname, or is that a sledge? Do you call it sledging over there?
Sledging,
call it
yes.
sledging, yeah. Or is that like a sledge that they wanted to do while they're
Yes.
competing? That'd be interesting.
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a really good conversation with Chris, and we can get into his love for mouthguards, and we can talk about, in his perspective, what is the gold standard of a mouthguard. So here we go. Hey there, Sports Dentistry fam. We've got big news. If you love sport, teeth, and travel, you're going to want to listen up.
That's right. The very first South African Sports Dentistry Association conference is happening this year, and you're invited.
Join us in Stellenbosch on Friday, the 5th of December, 2025, for a day of exciting lectures, expert panels, and vibrant networking with sports dentists from across the globe.
Then, stick around for a stunning conference dinner under the stars, Stellenbosch style, at the famous Byerskloof Winery. And on Saturday, the 6th of December, we head to the world-famous Cape Town Sevens rugby at the DHL Stadium, sitting at the foot of Table Mountain, for an epic day of sport, sun, and celebration.
It's the perfect blend of education, networking, and unforgettable South African energy, all in one weekend.
So, whether you're chasing CPD or chasing Sevens tickets, this is your chance to be part of something truly special.
Come join us in the Rainbow Nation. Tickets are limited. Grab yours now via the link in the description.
The inaugural South African Sports Dentistry Association Conference, December the 5th and 6th, 2025, Stellenbosch and Cape Town. We'll see you there.
Gives me great pleasure to welcome to the podcast this week, Chris Golze. Did I pronounce that right, Chris? You said it'd be pronounced different in Germany. Is that where your surname comes from? Have you a German heritage?
Yeah. They sort of pronounce the E on everything on the end, the end of a word or a letter. So it would be Golze, but yeah, it's Golze. Yeah, it's from Germany. My grandfather was in the German Navy and in World War II. Long story short, he ended up here, and so that's where the name comes from.
Did his boat get lost?
Well, it's still there. It's still there. It's in Norway. It's still poking out the water. There was a big battle. I'm not going to say famous, but it was a big battle in Narvik. Battle of Narvik. It's probably one of the things that if you type it in Google, it'll quite a few things come up. What it's called when they sink it, they open. Is it scuppered? Is that the term? When they actually sink the boat, so it can't be used. I think so. Anyway, there was a battle, and they ended up.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's how the Golze have ended up in England.
Very good. That's really interesting. So we'd just like to start off each one. Just obviously, me and Umar have got to know you quite well over the last year or so, especially with the attending the conference recently. But for any of our listeners that don't know a lot about you, just give us a little bit of your background and how did you get into sports dentistry?
Right. Well, yeah, I'm a dental technician. I've been a technician since started in the lab in 1994. So I've been just over 30 years. The lab that I originally worked, it was I guess you'd call it a full service lab. There was sort of ceramics and prosthetics, and there was very little thermoforming at the time. It's something which has got more and more popular certainly over my the span of my career. The first lab I started was 1994. That was local in Doncaster, where at the town or the city now where I live. It might have been the largest lab. It was still quite small in comparison to some labs that are around today. And yeah, that's how I got started. The mouthguard side, which I'm sure we'll probably go into a little bit more as we go along. There was, maybe half a dozen a year at the time, so it wasn't a very big part of the lab when I first started, for sure. So yeah, just over 30 years I've been doing it.
So yeah, you said there were about half a dozen mouthguards at that time when you were in that lab before. So how long were you with that lab before you decided to venture out on your own?
That lab would have been around 10 years, maybe not quite 10 years. And yeah, like I say, the thermoforming side and the mouthguard side wasn't a very big part of the lab. You say it was probably around half a dozen, maybe 10 a year. That which is not a lot considering what people are doing now. And I actually bought that lab with a work colleague at the time. We actually took over that lab. It was a no-brainer, really, the deal that we were offering. So I didn't really have much to lose by becoming self-employed from the original lab. And then a few years later, I actually opened my own lab, and that thing, the Excess Dental, as it is now, had been around. It'd be coming up. Is it 3 years or 4 years? They're coming up 4 years, I think. Yeah, it's. I was self-employed from 2008, so I would have been there for 14 years at the original lab.
Is the Excess lab that you have now, is that strictly only kind of mouth guards and thermoforming that you do?
Yeah, it's just thermoforming. We don't do any prosthetics or ceramics or any sort of restorations, any fixed restorations or removables. It's just thermoforming. The sort of retained splints and obviously whitening and the mouthguard side. Yeah, it's just thermoforming. It was the area of work which I found most interesting in the lab. I mean, I was able to sort of set up a denture, in a fashion, an okay denture, nothing, sort of like a private or elite level, if you like. I could build up ceramics, and I was okay at composites as well. But the thermoforming side is what I really enjoyed. I think most technicians tend to find one particular area that they enjoy more than everything else. So most technicians will be able to do every part of a technician's job, but then you tend to sort of gravitate towards one particular area. And that was just the area which it interested me the most. Being into sports, the mouthguard side of it kind of caught my eye as well. So yeah, that's when I decided to sort of set my own lab up. I wanted to do the work I actually enjoyed doing. So that's why I concentrated just solely on the thermoforming.
So you were saying there's maybe half a dozen or a couple of dozen a year. Would you find that would be the normal volume of mouthguards like a dental lab would do, unless it was more specialized like your own lab at the moment, like just like a standard dental lab? Would mouthguards be a pretty small area for them?
At the time, we didn't really have much contact with other labs, only the labs locally. There was no social media or Facebook or anything like that. So the only contacts we'd have would be with the local laboratories. We were probably all very much the same. I don't remember anybody saying, "Oh, they've got a run on mouthguard season," in August, when it might typically be. It was probably for a lab, for a full service lab like we were at the time. I would imagine that was the norm. Because we certainly weren't advertising for work like that. Maybe if we did sort of point Or if we did try and push that, maybe there would have been more. I don't know, but it's the owners at the time didn't really push for anything in particular, let alone sports guard. So yeah, I'd say it was probably the norm locally. As nationwide, we didn't have any contact at the time. Like I said, there was no socials like there is now. So it was the only gauge we've got is the fellas in the next village who had a lab as well. That was the only kind of reference point, if you like, that we would have had for the work.
And did you have a background in sport yourself, or did you enjoy playing sport or watching sport? What is it that attracted you to getting into mouthguard? You said you quite liked the thermoforming process. Was that because of your love of sport itself, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, I've always been quite active, as a kid, and even still now. So I think when you're into something, when you have an interest or a passion for something, you tend to notice maybe things other people wouldn't. So playing rugby at school, enjoying the sort of boxing and things like that on TV. I never sort of trained in sort of like combat sports or anything like that. But sort of enjoying most sports on TV, you tend to notice more things. I think just like anything, if you have a passion or an interest in anything, you will notice more than the average person, I guess. So yeah, the mouth guards, obviously with sort of rugby, probably more prevalent than any other sport. It was just something that kind of stood out. It's we could do that. Oh, we do them, and it's one of the things that you think, I could get into that. I'd like to get into that. So it's so yeah. I mean, my sports when I was younger, I played rugby at school, football. But I still play football now. But yeah, I've always had an interest for like the sort of boxing and there's obviously some like martial arts, MMA as it's become more and more popular as well. So I've always had a fondness for the sport. Yeah, I think it's one of the things which, for me, it allows me to shut off from everything else because you're concentrating just on that. I think it's a very good thing for somebody to do, whether it's team sport or just an individual sport. I think it's allows me to just, it's a sort of strange thing to try and say, but it allows me to relax, even though I might be getting kicked to God knows what on a Thursday night football. It's but it is relaxing in I guess in a mental way. It's good for the head.
Just then, when you found that you started to go a little bit more into thermoforming and mouth guards, did you find that, because just from my own experience, when we were taught undergrad, we were just really taught how to use a vacuum former on a sheet of 4mm EVA to create a mouth guard. But we know that's completely different from the pressurized thermoforming machines and multiple layers and laminated. Did you find then you upskilled quite quickly, or were you already kind of doing them to a pretty good standard and just focused more on them?
The first ones that we did, it was always a 4mm sheet of EVA. There was the different colours available at the time, but it was a very basic version of a mouth guard. There were a simple vacuum machine, which I think the machine that we had at the time was one of the better vacuum machines, and it was an old is it WHW? I think it was an old WHW machine, and I have seen one or two pop up in the lab forums over the years. It was probably quite an expensive bit of kit at the time, but yeah, it was, and I actually later found out, and they might not like me saying this, but it was. I think it was like the Henry Hoovers, the Henry vacuum cleaners. I think the motor was the same motor as one of those. I only found out about that is when we had to have it repaired once. I think the guy let it slip over the phone. So it was kind of based around like a Hoover, a Henry vacuum motor.
The Henry Hoovers are massive, like.
Yeah,
the Henry Hoovers are pretty good at vacuum, so that was pretty good standard. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you've ever taken one apart, the motor inside, there's the big case. I know I'm going off on a tangent here now, but yeah, I think it was basically the motor part inside, which the whole machine was sort of built around. But yeah, they're probably not very pretty to look at these days compared to some of the other machines. But yeah, it was good, but it was basic. And that was, so we used that for the whole time that I was employed there, and it was there when I first started there. So it could have been 30 years old when we actually come to swap it. So it was, it was a decent bit of kit quality wise, but compared to the machines now, the machines we use and other labs still use, it's a different world, to what it can actually produce.
As you started to go more into mouthguards, did you find things changed differently and you're upskilling a lot more? Like you're now producing mouthguards that are completely different than maybe you did originally. Have you found that develop over the years?
Yes, that's something which has changed massively from those early years. We did sort of try laminating with the old vacuum machine, but it just wasn't able to do the job to a standard I wanted it to do. It wouldn't heat up enough, and the pressure from the vacuum machine just wasn't enough to be able to laminate two sheets together and then to bond properly. So that's why we ended up moving to the machines, or a machine that we've got now, which is one of the Shoei machines. And the first one was a Mini Star. That allowed us to then laminate, to a high standard, to a good standard, which then allowed us to sort of be able to sort of offer the mouth guards in a version of what they are today. So it's one of the things which it has gradually evolved. And I mean, I can see photos that pop up now on your sort of Facebook memories or your Instagram, your Instagram history. It'll be a picture from 2 years ago of a job I've done, and I can see how it's changed from then just to now. You kind of learn a little bit more about how things work, or how people want them to be, how they want them to wear them. I can see the difference between a 2-year-old job and a job today. And then there's photos that pop up from 10 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, what were you doing there? That looks terrible, But at the time, it was the highest standard I could do, and it was probably comparable to anything out there. But when I kind of look back, and it's not embarrassing, because it's just progress. It's like anything. But it was, there's certainly work out there, and I'm thinking, I'll do that now, I'll do that now, I'll do that now. Just these tiny little things which change. It's like any industry, I would imagine. Things progress. We're sort of seeing the 3D printed thing sort of more and more popular, and that's just going to progress. So from where it was when it was sort of first launched, but it probably evolved quickly, and then it's just been gradual. Maybe it's for the last 10 years. It probably jumped. There was a big jump from the vacuum to the pressure forming, which allowed us to do different things. And then since we've had the pressure forming machines, those techniques have improved on a more gradual level. Probably this last 10 years, yeah.
Yeah. John alluded to it before. We had the pleasure of meeting you in person a few weeks ago at the second UK Sports Dentistry Conference in Manchester, and the quality of work that you had on show there literally was mind-blowing, because I know that the technician that we have on site up here in Edinburgh, King, was himself saying, wow, Chris's work is exceptional, and he was like, I want to speak to him, I want to chat to him to see how he does things. And that's coming from a fellow dental technician who also creates mouthguards at an extremely high standard. So, and you are well known for the type of mouthguards that you make, how customized they are. And I said to John, I goes, look, there's so many dental forums out there where people are constantly messaging on it saying, I need to find a lab who do custom made mouthguards for X, Y, and Z sport. Who should we send it to? What should I write on the prescription? What should I ask for? So I said to John, I goes, we need to get Chris on, because we want to really make a dummy's guide to mouthguards, whether it's from what they do, if they're still taking impressions, to what they're doing, to scanning, what they should write on the prescription, for what sport it is, what sort of things they should be asking. So if we can go through this in quite a bit of detail, because the floor is yours now, Chris, for the guy who creates such exceptional work. So If you take it to initial, so a person or a clinician has a patient in the chair, and we'll go through analog and digital. So we'll go through analog first. So people who are still taking impressions, what would you like to see arrive in your lab for an analog impression? So what sort of things are you looking for someone who's taking impressions for mouth guards?
In sports dentistry, it's not just about treating injuries. It's about optimizing oral health for peak performance.
That's right, because when athletes push their limits, every detail matters, even their oral health.
That's why the Sports Dentistry podcast is being powered by Philips, true innovators in oral health technology.
Philips Sonicare toothbrushes use advanced sonic technology to disrupt plaque biofilm, removing up to 20 times more plaque than a manual brush.
And that's critical for athletes. With high carb diets, dry mouth, and frequent energy supplements, they're at greater risk of caries and gum disease.
Philips backs evidence-based dentistry, giving us tools that fit perfectly into performance-driven treatment plans.
So whether you're helping your athletes recover, protect, or perform,
elevate your protocol with Philips.
First and foremost, all of the teeth. You know, if we can include the second molar, you know, the sevens, that's or at least the sixes. That if it was short, if there was any less than that, we'd certainly question it and ask if they wanted to continue with the job. Depth, try and get as sort of far into the sulcus as possible with the impression material. We don't need a full palate because we tend to sort of remove a fair bit of that anyway, just to sort of increase the airway, so there's no obstruction there. So it helps, you know, it helps the athletes to breathe. So we don't need a full palate, but we do need some of the soft tissue past the margins, the lingular margins. But yeah, depth, and I mean we don't, as regards sort of wisdom teeth, the eights, we wouldn't cover those because they're just so far back in the mouth. But certainly the sevens to be included, and as deep into the sulcus as possible. That's with an analog impression. With either a silicone or an alginate impression. It's the sort of age-old thing, I think, in dental labs. It's if we get a good impression in, then everything that follows should be good as well. If you get a poor impression to start off with, you know, no matter how, it could be sort of finished really nice, it could be formed really nice, but if there's not enough covered, it might not fit as well as it could do.
So what sort of things are you receiving that when you look at it like that, they need to retake that? Obviously, clinicians want to make sure they give you as accurate as impression as possible, but what are the main things that you would see when you cast up like, well, that's poor, I need to send that back because they need to remake it or they need to retake it? So what sort of things should a clinician look at when they've taken the impression and they're looking at it right now and you're like, okay, well, this will be good enough for Chris to make this mouth guard I'm asking. So what should they kind of look at?
Just make sure that there's no heavy drag. We do notice that the more drag is generally around the posterior teeth with a silicone or an alginate impression. I mean, that's generally not quite noticeable when once the impression's removed, and just making sure that there's enough depth, certainly in the anterior region as well. We do occasionally get them sent in, and there's just not enough depth certainly around that sort of 3 to 3 area. That is probably the two main things. Sort of blowholes in or like air pockets and impressions we can generally get around. You know, that's not so bad. But sort of major areas to concentrate on would be in the anterior 3 to 3, making sure there's not too much drag around the posterior teeth. I mean, I know the sort of digital scans do help with sort of drag or air pockets, but we have noticed that it seems to be more difficult to get the same depth with a intraoral scan than it is. It seems to be more difficult to get it with the scanner than it is taking an impression. So yeah, that's one thing we haven't noticed over the years.
I think that was my next question, is that with digital, obviously we know that it's ultra accurate, but actually getting the sulcuses can be a bit more tricky. What I've found around that is by disabling the AI mode on the scanner itself means that you're getting a lot more kind of cluster, you're getting a lot more stuff that you probably don't need in it. But my thinking is if I can send that to the lab with more information what you need, then you can kind of trim it back and clean it up to what then you require. because if you don't do that, then it's obviously not picking up as much as what you want. And if you're not giving the lab enough information, certainly with the sulcuses, that's a problem with fit and with retention as well. So would you be quite happy to see scans that you would have to then clean up yourself? Is that something that obviously creates maybe a little bit more work for you because you have to manually then have to go in and clean it all up, but at least you're getting the information that you need?
Yeah, I am a fan of cleaning everything up and making my own models. I know some scanners do produce, automatically produce a model, but even then, if I got that, I'd still trim it all away and then start from scratch and try to angle it how I want it to be angled and change how the base is formed and things like that. So the raw data, I prefer to actually have the raw data and then clean it up myself and sort of remove anything which is not needed. And obviously it makes sure that things aren't removed before we even get it as well. So just the raw data for a scan is preferable here anyway, for what we do. I have noted, I don't want to be sort of calling sort of companies out or plugging anybody or anything. But I have noticed there's one particular scanner which I seem to get the best scans from, and that is, I don't know if you can beep it out, but it's the Medic scanners. I found that they do give a more consistent, whether it's just the shape of the what do they call the tip of the scanner? Is it just the head, or I don't know? I've not got much experience with scanners.
It's usually called it the scanner tip.
Yeah, whether that is a different shape which allows it to sort of get places other scanners can't, I don't know. So I've got practically zero experience with handling an intraoral scanner, but we have noticed that the best scans have come from Medic scanners. It may just be a coincidence, it might just be a coincidence, but it's that's what we have noticed here in the lab. But yeah, I guess with an intraoral scan, it's the same as you can take a bad scan, like somebody could send a bad impression. It's we have had on occasion have had scans which just aren't deep enough, or there's some sort of strange, almost like a break in the scan, and it's kind of overlapped, and then that data is when it's printed, it's maybe more obvious when it's been printed than when you see the actual scan on the laptop screen. But yeah, it's I guess there's pros and cons with both taking an impression for a mouth guard and the scanning. I found like on the whole, I would probably prefer to have an impression for a mouth guard, just because on average it gives me more information. I get more detail with a traditional impression rather than the scan. The other thing, some people may or may not know, as regards the materials that the models are made out of, an impression will be cast and cast in plaster or stone, and the scans, then get printed. When the material is formed over the models, you get a more defined form with a stone model than you do with a resin model, and that's because the stone model is porous, and when the pressure presses over the top of the EVA over the model, it forces the air out from underneath through the model, so you don't get tiny little air pockets in the occlusion or like incidentally. With a resin model, it's not porous, so there's more chance of tiny little air pockets getting trapped in those same areas. So as much as I like printed models, I think they're great, sort of nice and clean and sort of really nice to work with. I think you get a more defined form on a stone model than you do with the resin model.
I was actually going to ask a different question, but it's interesting that you brought that up. I was going to say, just with the scanning by stretching, it might be down, you might the scans that you may be seeing, it's just maybe people aren't being trained to take scans for mouth guards. They're being trained to take scans for Invisalign or scans for crown and bridge work, and they don't realise how to take the scans of the soft tissues, and some scanners are a little bit better at scanning soft tissues than others. And I do find if you stretch the upper lip, you can get further and deeper into the socket or into the sulcus. What I was going to ask was, how do you have a certain depth that you would go from the gingiva for your mouth guards? But then you've just touching on what you said about the models. There's quite a lot of debate about that. Whether I think it's quite well known that the stone models allow that escape of air a lot better. But do you think there is enough of a difference where it would affect the retention of the mouthguard in an athlete's mouth? Because I know myself, when I do mouthguards on a stone and a 3D printed model, I prefer the stone model because you can feel, when you put it on and off the model, you can feel the retention better if it's been formed on the stone model. But do you think it's enough of a difference where it actually have an impact to an athlete wearing it?
As regards retention, I think if you had the same mouth, the same athlete, I think they would notice a difference. Whether it would be enough of a difference for it to become loose and dislodged when they don't want it to be, I don't know. That could differ between person to person. It's one of them questions. It's one of them questions which is, it's probably impossible to answer unless you had a controlled, the same athlete with one job with a regular impressionist form model, and then a scan and a printed model. The sort of retention, the shape of the mouth, the sort of bone structure, the soft tissues can help with the retention. It's not just the teeth. It's a difficult one. I wouldn't want to say, oh yes, it'd be thermoforms applying this on a printed model will fall out, because I just don't know. It can just be a guess from me. But it is visibly noticeable when you have one. I can tell if something's been formed on a stone model or a resin model. It is visibly noticeable. So other people who don't do this day in day out might not notice that. It's with sort of experience of doing what I'm doing, you can see instantly that there is a definite visible difference between the two. How that transfers to feeling loose in the mouth or feeling tight in the mouth, I wouldn't like to say it has a massive difference and would affect how something would potentially come out, or more likely to come out, should I say, if they were hit or punched, or no. It's very difficult to say how much impression past the gingiva. I think as long as we've got a centimetre past the lingual margins, that should be enough for us to be able to make a mouthguard. On the buccal margins, as much as possible. Sometimes it might be difficult to get a whole centimetre, in posterior region. But if we had at least that, we could make a mouthguard with that. I wouldn't send that back. I wouldn't ask for another impression if we had a centimetre past the margins. I'd say as much as we can get would be great. As a minimum, that's what we'd like.
Perfect. So let's say you've now got the stone model or you've got the resin model. On the lab prescription from the clinician, talk us through what your ideal prescription would be. What sort of things are you looking for? What sort of things are you getting asked for? What sort of things that you make it a complete prescription, which means that, yep, I know what the clinician is talking about and I can make that mouthguard. So if you can go through what you would like to see on the prescription.
The usual name. If it's a child, if it's a younger child, you can generally tell, obviously, by just looking at the impression or the cast or made model. The sports, it's spore, because what we do here is we make the mouthguard for the sport it's for. We'd make one differently for rugby than we would do for boxing or for certain sort of cycle sports and things like that. Yeah, any design, colour. It's the sort of simple stuff, obviously, like some that details of the patient, but the actual specifics for the mouthguard is the colour, the sport it's for, and if there's any specific requirements, if they have a gag reflex, or some people we've made a slightly shorter mouthguard or a slightly thinner mouthguard, they might have a I don't know the clinical term, it might have a tight lip. There's not a lot of space between the teeth and the inside of the mouth. So we might have to sort of compromise on some thickness. So they are actually going to wear it. If something's too thick, like a standard thickness, but they still can't tolerate that, then they're not going to wear it. So it's almost if it's going to be the bag, it's pointless it being made. So we can and we can make things thinner if they're required as well. So, but yeah, the sort of basics is colour, the sport it's for. If there's any like design details such as name and anything like that, be as specific as possible, or images. You know, if you want like a club logo or anything like that, to be specific regards that. Because sometimes a club might have 3 different logos. You know, it's to be as specific as possible with any design on top of the sort of what it's for. You just sort of how it looks physically, you know, the colour.
Can you just explain in a little bit more detail the difference in sport? Because that's a big thing that people ask. So talk us through the kind of thicknesses that you're looking at when it comes to rugby or MMA or boxing or ice hockey. So can you just give the listeners a bit of an indication as to how thick you would make them and how they would differ from your main sports that you make them for?
Yeah, I mean, as a standard for a boxing or MMA, like of kickboxing, the sort of combat sports type mouth guards, as a default setting, if you like, we'd make it 3 layers. The first layer would be a 1 millimeter thick layer. We found that gives us the best form around the initial form around the mouth, around the teeth and the soft tissues. This is all EVA as well. It's all the same. It's all the same type of material. I have just different thicknesses. So the first layer would be 1 millimeter. Then, depending on the size of the mouth, we'd either use a 3 or a 4 millimeter for the main colour of the mouth guard. And then we'd use the top layer, which is clear, which is always the clear layer, and that would be 2 millimeters. These depending on the requirements for the athlete, we can change the thickness of the middle layer, which is generally the coloured layer, and we can change the thickness of the top clear layer as well, make it slightly thicker if we want it, or slightly thinner as well. The sort of the differences between 1 millimeter, it doesn't feel much in the hand, but when it's in the mouth, it can feel huge. So yeah, we sort of found that even differences with like half a millimeter or 1 millimeter difference in the thickness, something become more tolerable, and then obviously the athletes can be more compliant with the sort of guard wearing it. But yeah, sort of boxing, combat sports as standard, 1 millimeter, 4 millimeter, 2 millimeter. For rugby, we would still do 3 layers. It would be 1, 3, and then 2, but that would be trimmed slightly differently as well, depending on the sport. But for cycle sports, so that can change as well. Because it's not. It depends on the sport, and it depends on the other sports equipment or the other safety equipment they've got. So, like say for BMX. You know, I'm sure as young as you've also rode around BMX bikes, but they might have different types of helmet. They might have like the pudding bowl type helmet, which is open face. So if they fall off, they're more at risk of hitting the face on the ramp, the curb, the wall, or whatever it is. But if they wear a full face helmet, the protection from impact is covered by it's like a chin guard or the face. You know, like a full face helmet. So the difference between those two, they could both do the same sport, but because of the helmet they wear, the mouth guard may need to be made differently. One with a full face helmet has the sort of pressure around the face, around the cheek. So you have to take into account that when you're making your mouth guard, maybe make it slightly thinner, because you're not worrying about the impact here, and here. It's more about the impact. So if you fall back, bite the tongue, or the cheek, you're almost protecting them from themselves rather than with the open face helmet. If they fall off, then the impact could come from different places. If somebody was wanting a mouth guard for BMX or other sports, which are, you know, like the different types of headgear, that information on the ticket would be important as well. Because if you were making a mouth guard with the open face helmet, then they changed we thought they had an open face helmet, but they had a closed helmet. It wouldn't be as comfortable, because you don't have this with an open face helmet. I'm doing hand signals, but I know there's been no video on the podcast, but it's quite difficult to explain if you don't know the sports. Which I think it's one of them things where, because we're aware of all these different sports and the different the different safety equipment that they wear as well, it helps us to produce something which is more suitable. is part of the information we need on the ticket. Specifics, not just the sport, but what do they have that as well? Do they have the this would just be an X specific as well. So yeah, so we would that's just 3 examples of 3 different sports. How would make them each mouthguard be slightly different because of the different types of impact. But certainly with team sports as well, it's rugby, hockey. They all sort of want to talk to each other, and I'm sure they all play team sports at some sort of level. At school, you're talking to your teammates all the time, so it needs to be as allow the sort of the flow of speech as much as possible, which is why we make a rugby or a hockey mouthguard slightly different to a boxing one. When you're boxing, you take that to be talking to anybody else. It's you might be listening, but you're generally not talking. So there's different requirements for team sports than there is for the sort of combat sports, sort of kickboxing or MMA. I mean, we are actually sort of made mouthguards for motorcycle racing, and again, that was the full face helmet thing, and that's more of a when the sort of speeds that they're reaching, sort of 200 miles an hour going down the straights and things like that, you tend to sort of clench a lot. So again, it's more like you're protecting them from themselves rather than from being hit by anything, because of the equipment that they have. They'll be sort of behind the steering, 200 miles an hour, gritting teeth. First corner, high side, flicks you off into the gravel or whatnot, fall back, bang your head, bite your tongue off, or, bite through your tongue. Whereas if you're wearing a mouthguard, that's less likely to happen. So that's another example of how we'd make something different depending on the sport.
And just in that example, would you put occlusal indentations into the mouthguard, or would you just have it as a flat finish on the occlusion?
If somebody wanted the occlusion put in, we can do that. So the vast majority of scans and impressions we get are just on the upper arch. But so if we do that, we tend to trim the sort of the premolar from the 4 to the 6 or 7, depending on how far back the mouthguard goes. You tend to trim that flat on the top. We have sort of found that, speaking to some different athletes, that the resting point, say if they're in the chair having their impression done, your occlusion or the resting point, the comfortable, is different to if they're playing or boxing. They maybe sort of clench more, or you have found it's sort of slightly different to what they have, what we've been sent. We might have to sort of adjust things because they found out they've been wearing it in the gym or whatnot, and then they want to have less of a deep occlusion into the surface. We tend to sort of flatten off the sort of 4, 5, 6, 7, and then they kind of naturally find their own bite. When after the one the mouthguard for a couple of sessions, they'll find their own occlusion when they're actually training. That's something we have sort of found over the years. Speaking with sort of different athletes, and sometimes speaking to some of the clinicians as well. Occasionally, things that if they wanted a deep bite. So as a rule, we don't put a deep occlusion into the surface of the mouthguard. We put a very sort of faint one. It's there, but it's where the bite is registered. But the flat plane, it also allows the jaw to move more from side to side, and this is probably more so in sort of boxing, MMA, the combat sports than other sports. That if they get hit, but then if the lower jaw is locked into occlusion, there's more chance of injuries up around the TMJ because there's nowhere for the jaw to move and it's not absorbing the impact as much. It's fixed. So the force is then transferred or can be transferred up towards the TMJ, and that's when you sort of hear about more jaw fractures. So, but if you have the movement side to side to get hit within your lower jaw moves, it's absorbing that impact. It's absorbing that force. So that's one of the things you found speaking to different people. They prefer not to be locked in. They prefer that movement, that freer movement, just because. And it's sort of boxing and MMA, Rugby, it's different kinds of impact, or more likely to be sort of face on rather than, either side. But yeah, that's what we have sort of found with speaking to people over the years. They do prefer not to be locked in with the flu.
It's just from the TMJ stuff. Has that come from anecdotal evidence, or it's just been feedback from athletes and stuff, or is there actually research to show that as well?
No, it's just been feedback from the athletes. They're sort of worried about being locked in. They prefer to have that movement. They don't want to be fixed. There's just a fear of being injured, and a jaw fracture. I don't know how long something like that would be to recover from. But I would imagine it's months, not days, is it, for something like that? It's if it's the livelihood, they can't be afford to be out in the gym for months on end. So it's just feedback that it's. I mean, there may be research on it. It's not something I've sort of delved too deep into. I tend to listen to the people who are wearing these things. They wear them, hours and hours every day. So it'd be crazy not to listen to these people. The people sort of using these, and that's just one of the things that the feedback from certainly from the combat sports guys. That's one of the things you find.
So kind of general rule of thumb would be that you wouldn't tend to do kind of occlusal indentations, just from what you've described there. When you're making these mouth guards, we can standardize it in terms of saying standard fit or got an extra hard insert or a hard insert. Do your fees change depending on what sport you're making it for? Or is it just one flat fee that you have? We don't need to talk about cost, but I'm just saying, does it change depending on what colors you're using, what designs you're using, what sport it's being played for? Or do you just kind of do it, okay, it's all just because you're making them all the same way, essentially, maybe changing the thickness slightly, but because you might have to spend a bit more time customizing it, that takes more time. So does it depend on what you're making in terms of the cost that you'd then end up putting back onto the clinician?
The fees as regards thickness or how it's trimmed, there's no difference in fees for that. The difference in fee comes if there's more design work. Sort of, if somebody wants something that's quite intricate, you have to spend time doing that. We have to charge for that, obviously. But as regards a boxing mouth guard, would cost the same as a rugby mouth guard, would cost the same as a BMX mouth guard, would cost the same as motorcycle or horse riding. There's no difference in lab fees there. It's just the difference in lab fees is purely based on design. There's more work to do with the design. We have to go for it. Like now, it's just like anything. It's but as regards different prices for different sports. No, that's not the case now.
And just touching on that, that's the next question I just want to ask. One of the big differences we notice with your mouth guards compared to a lot of other mouth guards is the graphics that are on them. And you did a really nice UK Sports Dentistry Association mouth guard for us for the conference. How did you get into that side of things? How did you get into the graphics, and how are you able to implement that into your mouth guards?
It was one of those things where everybody likes the name to be on something. You got your football shirt, you have your name on your back. Certainly when you're younger, anyway. You have personalised things, and it becomes more unique. And I think that if somebody can customise something, make it more unique, more personal to themselves, they're probably more likely to want to use it. And this is probably more important with younger wearers than maybe older athletes. It's sort of compliance for get the kids to make sure they don't receive the mouth guard in the gym bag when it's hockey lesson or hockey PE at school or with the club. So a lot of these things they're not compulsory in a lot of schools or clubs, and it kind of the sort of compliance is solely on the individual to make sure you bring your shin pads, bring your gloves, bring your helmet, bring your mouth guard. And I think if something is unique to them, I think they're probably more likely to use one. And if there's probably not, if they don't want to wear something and they don't have to wear it, then they're not going to wear it. That's what people are like. That's what and certainly kids, if they don't have to do something, then I don't know if you guys are parents, but I know I am. It's a bit, if the lads never wanted to do something, it'd be quite hard push to enforce it when I'm not there at school. So it was the idea of sort of making it unique to that person. Well, as unique as it could possibly, to a point, and there's more likely for it to actually be used. Yeah, a nice looking mouth guard. It's a nice red colour, nice, or clear, or what. It could be the best mouth guard in the world. But if it's in somebody's gym bag next to the sweaty socks, it's useless. So yeah, the idea of making it attractive to wear, it's more likely to be used, but more likely to be worn.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they need to be designed in such a way where the children or the adults will wear it because it looks cool. It's something that is serving a purpose in terms of the main thing, which is protection. But at the same thing, it's something that they can maybe show off, and if people see it and say, "Oh, I quite like what that design is. I want to do something similar." And the sheer array of mouthguards that you had on show at the conference was so different. It's so different. Everybody's what they like is so different. So what I might like will be something different to what John will like and the next person. So the fact that you're able to really customize it really does give that attraction to people to say, actually, yes, I do want to do it. And they want to invest in it. Like a lot of parents then say, how much is a mouthguard? Oh, well, I don't want to spend that much money. But then I do say to them as well, certainly as children go, they're going to get new shoes, they're going to get new trousers, they're going to get new jumpers. But when you take a trauma dentally, that's going to impact the rest of your life. It's not just going to be something it's a one-off thing. Then you then start looking at kind of, emotional distress and financial distress over time and psychological as well. So I do think I've got a daughter, and if she does end up doing contact sport, I'll certainly be making her custom made mouth guards. And I think for that fee, it's certainly worth it, especially if you're getting something that's custom made. And we've had guests on the show. We had Anthony from Oprah on, who obviously does kind of more commercial numbers with regards to mouth guards, but certainly if you're looking for something really individual and unique, it's very difficult to walk past your stand. That's for sure.
Yeah. The graphics has been. It is quite an interesting part of the job. Like you say, everybody's got their own preference. Somebody might like something which is there's lots going off on there. The sort of some of the things are really intricate. Somebody might like something as simple as their initials, but in a particular type of writing, and it's individual and unique to them. It's how they want it. They have control over that. What we have found is sometimes we'll get this. This might come back to the lab docket instructions, and it might just be, oh, just make it look cool. And I'm like, I'm almost 50. What I think cool is different to what 17-year-old girl might think is cool. And it's very difficult to try and think what they might want. So any specifics regards that is good. Some of the instructions can be quite vague. I don't think there's been many times when we've not been when somebody's not been happy with what we've done with the vague instruction, but there's always that little bit of sort of stress that when it goes back and it's like, oh, I'm just on this, it's going to be all right. I might think it looks great. The sort of the dentist prescribing dentist might think it looks great, but if a 15-year-old hockey player thinks it looks terrible, then I'd be like, I'd be disappointed in myself because they're not happy. But it can be difficult sometimes to sort of try and think what inside the mind of a teenager, what they think is cool these days. Even then, it's like, not all teenagers like the same thing. So you just have to try and use the experience we've got, and try and understand what's if you're into a particular if it's a program or music or something that might be the graphic might be based on. Sometimes I've got no idea what these things are. So which is why this is why the specifics are very, very helpful in occasions like that. So yeah, it's but yeah, the graphics it can be quite interesting, and you kind of learn what sometimes what is cool and what's not. It's sort of current things. Somebody will say, "Oh, I want such and such." So I'm like, I've got no idea what that is. So then I have to do a little bit of research, and all right, yeah, I know. And then it kind of comes from there. And And sometimes we do end up spending far too much time on these graphics, and it's probably more than what is expected. But then sometimes we'll think, if we don't do it like that, I'll be disappointed because I've got the chance to do it like that. I want to do it best I think it could be, not just half-ass it, and it just do the bare minimum. Because if I'd be disappointed in something like that. If we could have done that. If we finished the piece, sent it out, and then the actual, you kind of regret, we had a chance to do that on that job. I wish we'd have done it. I don't want to feel like that. I want to be able to think, we'll do this as good as we can, and if it takes a little bit longer than the average one, then we'll probably put that time in to do it to make it look as good as we think it should be. That sort of level to quality and detail, I think is really. I mean, it's important for me personally to do that. But I think, and quite often the people who are receiving these things have got no idea what's gone in. They just think it looks now, great, nice one, and they might not think somebody spent an hour searching such and such, over particular images. They'll not think that, and they might have sort of tried it 3 times and it's gone wrong. Every time, and the 4th time it's kind of gone right. There's little differences to how we want it to look, how we think it should look, and we don't do it for recognition, anything like that. We do it because we want it to look as good as it could possibly look, and not just to look, but to actually perform, to do what it should do as well. It's not just about how these things look. They have a purpose, these things. So it's not just down to even the plain colours. I put up a post on the socials yesterday. It was just three solid colour mouthguards. I think it was a maroon one, a navy one, and a pink one. But it would just kind of show that the level of care into these things it's not just the ones with all the fancy letters on or pictures. We do the same thing with the plain colours. It could be a white mouthguard, and we make sure it looks as good as we could possibly make it. And that has always been the idea of doing something and not being happy with it. I'd rather start it again. I mean, I've done that in the past. Something, and it's not quite even finished right. For different reasons, different things can go wrong in my life. And I'm not sending it out. It's not right. It's imagine if somebody's got a 14 pound and there's a black dot in it from whatever it is, but it'd be been fired in a way, and it's not quite right. It's the same principle as any other lab made appliance. If it's not, it needs to be as good as it could possibly be, and that is really. It might sound cliche and cheesy, but that is the most important thing. It's got to be. If it leaves there, it's got to be as good as it could possibly be from our hands. The best that we could possibly do. Like I said, as cliche as that sounds, that's where we are with what we do.
Yeah, I think you've demonstrated there just how much pride you take into your mouth guards and how they look at the finish, and you can really see that whenever you see. We saw that at the conference when we looked at your samples and things like that. It really does come across. So, like, there's lots of people that are doing mouth guards, but as Umar said, like, if you're looking at a really customized mouth guard, like your mouth guards do really stand out when it comes to that field. Thanks very much, Chris, for giving us so much of your time today. I know we're with the compress in the background, you've been under pressure, but just to finish up, is there any sort of big sporting events or anything you're looking forward to this year? Is there anything coming up?
Sporting events. I mean, football's my sport, so the big thing is going to be the World Cup, which is going to be next year. I think there. I was at a fight show the weekend just gone. It's a friend. It's his promotion and things like that. I really enjoy because you can speak to the people who are actually taking part. You're not just there sat in your seat, but you can actually speak to these people you're sort of milling about, and so actually getting that access to the people who are wearing what you might be making. You sort of ask, even if they don't use things that we've made, they have their own dentist in their centre, wherever they want to. But you're actually speaking to these people. That does help. I think the passion from these people, because you kind of know them. Some of them are friends. Some of them are I just sort of speak to through work and things like that. those things I get more excited about than, say, UFC or the other big sort of fight show and things like that. Actually speaking, I guess it's essentially grassroots. The sport I prefer rather than the big razzmatazz shows and events and things like that. It's I think you get. I'm trying to think of the word now. The not involved in it, but the investment in some of these things. You actually invest in cutting all these people personally. I prefer those than the sort of big event might be pay-per-view, or it might cost you 200 quid for a ticket. It's rather to the sort of localized national shows and games and things like that. It's I think it's important for me to be able to do that because it allows me to sort of get research for what I do as well. Yeah, I'm not going to get access to the sort of the rugby superstars as such on a person. I know you guys might do, but as with me personally, speaking direct to these people, you find out a bit more about what they do, what they need, things like that. And that's what I look forward to rather than the big big money events. If you ever get to, I don't know if you guys have ever sort of done sort of like the local boxing or local MMA shows, but get yourselves down. They really are entertaining. It's, for sort of 25, 30, 40 quid, and you get a full afternoon or an evening's entertainment. I'd certainly recommend wherever you are in the country, sort of going and seeing those events because there's something else. It's you might even get to see some stars in the future as well. It's good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I used to go a lot to the underage amateur All Irelands, and it was a friend of mine's sons that were coming through, and I watched, and a lot of the boxers there are now professional and on the brink of pushing up. But it's nice to have seen them whenever they were like underage coming through, and you have them memories. You do feel a wee bit more invested because you've had that sort of more of an engagement in them local events. It does give you a wee bit more invested interest, as you say. Chris, it's been great chatting to you. I'm sure we could spend another few hours chatting about mouthguards. But I just want to thank you for giving you your time today and giving you your insights. It's been great to understand your perspective and everything.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me to be part of this. I mean, we've not even touched on the whole smart mouthguard thing or stuff like that. Whether that be something for another day or a separate conversation. At some other point. There's lots of things that I enjoy about this job, and there's lots of things I actually want to be able to get into as well. So. But it is rewarding work. It is. I do enjoy the job. It's one of the things I'd probably do as a hobby if I did something else it's paying the bills, So, but it's to actually be able to sort of make these things physically. I think that I do get a lot of enjoyment out of that. It's good work.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned smart mouthguards, and we haven't even touched on the possibility of direct to 3D printed mouthguards. I think that we might be setting up another episode of the podcast where we can get you back on and look at maybe the future in mouthguards and how it might be in 10 years' time.
Yeah, it's things like that. It's sort of progressing so much. It's you sort of click on the sort of dental lab news or dental technology news every month. There's something new. There's something coming out or different. So, things have been improved from previous. I think you kind of just briefly skirt around that. At the start of the chat, but it's something I'll definitely be keeping an eye on for sure, and it would be nice to sort of get involved with that. We'll see what happens.
Thanks very much, Chris, for taking the time to speak to us. That was great. I really enjoyed that conversation and very informative on a dummy's guide to mouthguards.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, Chris.
Thanks very much, Chris.
We are delighted to have Ionate as a sponsor for the Sports Dentistry podcast. Are you looking for a water bottle that's built to keep up with your active lifestyle? Look no further than Ionate, the totally leak-proof water bottles with triple lock technology to prevent spills no matter where you're headed. With a simple one-touch opening mechanism, you can sip on the go without hassle. Plus, Ionate's sleek, modern designs are not only functional but can be personalized just for you. Made from high-quality steel, these bottles are easy to clean and, best of all, they're sustainable. From 320 mils to 1200 mils, Ionate has the perfect size for you, whether you're just out for a jog or going on a long hike. And it doesn't stop at water bottles. Ionate also has travel mugs and flasks to keep your drinks just right wherever you are. Ionate is the official water bottle supplier to the British and Irish Lions on their tour to Australia this summer, and are the official water bottle supplier to the NFL, so you know you're getting the best. I have been using their bottles for a long time now and cannot recommend them highly enough. So head over to www.ionate.co.uk to get your hands on the best bottles in the business, bar none. Now back to the pod.
It's another guest, Umar, where you can just hear the passion that they have for what they do.
You can definitely tell that he lives and breathes thermoform.
Yeah, thermoform.
And he loves just doing it. And I mean, we could have talked to him for hours about lots of different parts of mouthguards. He even touched on it himself. He didn't even get into instrumented or anything else like that. And hopefully he has managed to answer a lot of questions that people may have. And hopefully people have found that conversation quite interesting about his background and how he got into it, but also the sort of mouthguard that he makes and why they are different to other people, and the sheer craftsmanships he puts into each mouthguard. I've got a lot of respect for him because it's such a niche skill to have, but it's something that will never go out of fashion because, as we've discussed before, when it comes to 3D printed mouthguards, I don't feel it's going to replace the traditional way we're making mouthguards, because there's no problem with the traditional way we're making mouthguards. Obviously, we've mentioned that quite a few times before, and materials that are being used for 3D printing are probably not at the level, and they're certainly not at the level that needs to be maybe CE approved, which we've talked about before as well. So people like Chris will be in a job for a long time, I reckon. And I hope so too, because that level of care that he gives each mouthguard, it's exceptional.
Yeah, like I've spoken about it before. We didn't actually go into 3D printed mouthguards with Chris, but we've spoken about this maybe a couple of times, or at least me and you have spoke about it a couple of times. And I just don't see how it's going to take off just because there isn't a problem with what our current solution is. If we're using custom fitted, dual laminated, thermoform mouthguards, they're the gold standard. They're good at what they do. If they're designed correctly, athletes love them. So there's not really, there's not a problem that needs to be solved. It's maybe just this whole craze around 3D printing, and it's really 3D printing has really taken off, and it's almost took over about how it can maybe be one solution fits a lot of things for dentistry. But I don't know. I think it's going to struggle the same way. There's a lot of hype around 3D printed crowns and things like that, just particularly with the Sprint Ray and the Minas and stuff. But if you compare that to what's been there for dental clinics for a few decades anyway, and that's like a milled crown or a milled Emax, is it any better? It's still the same day. You're getting it on the same day. Yeah. Just the equipment probably for 3D printing is probably a lot more cheaper to get started with than getting your whole syrup machine and your milling unit and getting all that set up. But the actual product isn't comparable just at the moment. So again, I think that's going to be an area where 3D printing might struggle to really take off because, again, there's not a real problem with the solutions that we have at the moment. There's no issue with the Emax crowns that are being milled on the same day by a certain machine. And that it's going to be it's the exact same with mouthguards. There's no issue we have at the moment with what our solution is for mouthguards. Maybe it's just the process is a lot quicker, and maybe that's where it gets maybe a run on the laminated mouthguards. But I think when you have, I don't see 3D printing, and particularly I would have good conversations with James Murphy, who is a guy who has a company that does direct to 3D printed mouthguards in Dublin. And some of the limitations are the likes of individuality of mouthguards and the type of design and colours and things like that you're never going to be able to repeat the likes of what Chris is producing. with the 3D printed mouthguard and the designs that he's doing and things like that. And that's where I think that there's always going to be, I can't see, thermoforming a mouthguard becoming redundant. I was just thinking there, it's really interesting. This is the third person we've had on about mouthguards, and all three people are doing slightly different. With Anthony on from Opro, and he's very much volume.
Yeah.
They're set up for volume, and they're producing high quality mouthguards, but real volume side of things. And then we had Irwave on, and they're looking more at, sort of looking at trying to get a good boiling bite in that's focused on performance. And then now we've got Chris on, which is like a real individualized mouthguard production. So it's completely different than Anthony and Opro, where it's more focused, spend a lot more time maybe on the mouthguards. It's a one-man machine, but he's a lot more focused on customizing it with not only just the fit and the design, but also with the bit that they use for putting there's two different designs there, isn't it? The design of the thickness and stuff of the mouthguard, and there's the design of actually the graphics and stuff that he's putting on the front. So that's completely different as well. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. Let me just read out some of the names he's provided mouthguards for, right? Tyson Fury, Terri Harper, Jamie McDonald, Josh Warrington, Maxie Hughes, Rico Franco, James Parker for MMA, Danny Mitchell, Dakota Ditcheva, Leon Edwards, Paul Daly, Scott Redding motorcycling, and he used to do a lot of stuff with rugby players as well. There's some massive names there, and he sent me some photos of the athletes wearing them, and I'm going to put them on the post when he put it out, because Chris isn't the sort of guy he's not a sort of look at me sort of guy, and the quality of work that he shows and he brings out, I think he should be more forefront with it. Speaking to him, it's funny, he didn't swear once in the entire time we actually recorded him. But as soon as the cameras and the mic was off, he's like his normal self, right? What he's normally like, right? And this is a family friendly podcast. We try not to swear on the show, but it's important to get to know the real Chris behind, who's putting his blood, sweat, and tears into making a product for some of the best athletes in the UK, and the design that he makes. And that's why I kind of wanted to give him an opportunity to talk and to speak, because I feel he really needs to get his products out there more, not in a sense that he needs to go and showcase it more and be like, oh, look at me. But I think people like us need to give him a platform and say, mate, your work is amazing. And our technician here in Edinburgh, who I work closely with, he's amazing at making mouthguards, like absolutely fantastic. And even he was saying how good Chris's work was. And that's coming from another dental technician colleague. I mean, you can't get higher praise than that.
No, and that's not the first time I've heard that as well. I remember going to mouthguard education day. Oh, it must be it's a good 4 years ago anyway. And it was being run by Keith Winwood and Rhea, our good friend Rhea, and it was the back of her PhD in the mouthguards, and they ran it out of Manchester Metropolitan University, and they ran the day there, and it was mainly focused around for dental technicians. And myself and Peter were at it, and we were talking to a lot of dental technicians, and Chris wasn't there himself, but a lot of the dental technicians, when we were having conversation, were talking about his work and trying to understand what he was doing, because it was looking so good and it was getting such good feedback. So I think that's the highest praise you can get. It's okay for us saying it, but when dental technicians themselves, his own peers, are looking to copy him and looking to try to understand what he's doing, I think that's a fantastic recommendation.
Absolutely. You said that Opro, obviously they build on mass. There's definitely a market for that. People like Chris, and there's other great technicians who make customized mouthguards, and they also have a place as well, because I always feel that people will want customization and they want bespokeness, they want uniqueness. And when you know that somebody's going to give that level of attention to giving you a product, then you will pay top dollar for that. And to be honest with you, his prices they're completely reasonable, Chris's prices, and that should reflect fairly on what the clinician then charges the patient. So you can't put a price on top quality, handmade craftsmanship.
Definitely not. Definitely not. There's always going to be a market for it. Just touched it on there about Irwi. Have I actually started to use one of their products? Have you tried to test any of them out yet?
I have.
I've been using
You- you-
the recovery one for when I'm sleeping because I do even a clenching and stuff. So
Okay.
it's all the
How you
stress
feel
of
with
this
that?
podcast.
It's not stressful. This is the enjoyable part when we just get to sit and chat. The stressful part is figuring out how we're going to do a live pod, but that's a conversation for another day.
You know, firstly, I was pleasantly surprised with the retention of the fit. Now, it's not as good as a custom fitted thermoformed appliance that's made around a model, whether that's a stone model or a 3D printed model. It's not as good a fit as that, but I used the microwave option of warming it up to form it, and I was pleasantly surprised about how the retention of it. Now, you can still remove it a little bit with your tongue, but it's never come out once while I've been sleeping. Like, I haven't flicked it out. You know, sometimes with other appliances, if you've tried them, or even you get your patients would say, even when they're wearing whitening trays, even for overnight, they say, oh, I can't wear them. I wake up and they're laying beside me at the pillow or whatever, because they're taking them out. I haven't experienced that where I woke up and it's out of my mouth, or I've been able to take it out easily or anything. So first of all, I was pleasantly surprised with the technology that they've used from a boil and bite perspective to get that retention. The other aspect is, I don't know, it's hard to judge whether I don't wear any of the sleep sort of the whoops. I used to wear a whoop and then I fell out of the habit of doing it. So I don't know if it's improving my sleep or not. Initially I did feel it was initially, but I haven't probably put enough focus on to try to see if it is. But I do try to wear it most nights actually. I feel a wee bit more comfortable wearing it when it's in. The only other thing I've noticed was, because I was quite interested about their concept of tongue, where the tongue was going to be positioned, and that they were looking at their technology of trying to get the tongue positioned between the lower teeth, where a lot of other concepts would suggest that the tongue should be on the palate in dentistry. And I find that my tongue still stays in the palate. Now, whether I've trained that over the years, whenever I was doing some myofunctional therapy training and things like that, I'm doing a few things, but I still find that I keep the tongue on the palate. Now, maybe that's just where my tongue wants to go. So I can understand the wee bits and pieces that they have on to try to encourage the tongue to be against them, but I don't find that on it. But so it's interesting at the moment. I'm still trying. I'm starting to do a bit more running now. It's the off season in our sports, so I'll be doing a little bit more running. I'm going to be trying their performance one day. I'm going to do their running to see how I feel with that in. So I'm looking forward to giving that a test.
Well, it's good that you tried the microwave method, because I tried the traditional boil and bite, inverted commas method. So I went with the PX1 and PX2. So I thought what I'll do is I'll try both them out, and I found the process very easy in terms of actually doing the mold, putting it in the boiled water and then cold water and popping it in and just allowing it to set and then leaving it for 24 hours to kind of its fully set stage. Difference between the PX1 PX2, similar to what was mentioned. PX1 was a bit of a looser fit. It's something that you feel that you can just flick out with your tongue. Some people may like that. I preferred the PX2. I felt the tighter fit was more suited to me, because I didn't like the fact that I was able to flick the PX1 out with my mouth. And I tried both of them at the gym on two separate occasions doing the same workout. So one week I used the PX1, the second week I used the PX2. And I have to say, I don't know again if it was a placebo, maybe because I felt I should be lifting more. I did feel like I did lift more. I felt there was less tension in my jaw. Again, I don't know whether that was a placebo. It was using that. The reason I stopped using it was because I also lost my weightlifting belt at the same time. So I must have left that in the gym, and nobody's handed it in. So I've now associated my PX2 with losing my weightlifting belt. So in my head, I'm raging because nobody's handed it in, and now I've affiliated it with something negative. And that's not the PX2's fault, obviously. It's my own fault being daft, leaving my belt around. But I like to do a bit of running as well. I've not used it for running yet, but when we go running together, whether that's in Dusseldorf or in Cape Town, we should probably both have our
Try it.
and we can try and have conversation while we've got them in.
I just, for our listeners, I would just like to apologize for the fact that Umar is trying to fool us into the belief that he's lifting big enough weights that he needs a weightlifting belt.
Oh, it's tough when you're lifting 60 kilos dead.
Yeah.
Come on. I try to look after my back. I need to try to look after my back.
Yeah.
No, but I
it's-
was pleasantly surprised. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think it's important. We spoke about it earlier on in the podcast this evening, that it's important that to try these products, because you don't want to be recommending them if you're not trying them and you're trying to understand them. And I've always found it's good to have an open mind about things and not just like if it's some sort of concept that's not exactly the same as what you've been doing or you're thinking of your concept. It's important to have an open mind and try it and see and then make your assumptions from there. So we'll give the PX1 a go and then I'll see how we get on with that as well. But back to Chris's mouth guards. That was really interesting chat with Chris. I'm glad we had it. I'm sure we'll have him back on again at some stage. We're diving into, because we've talked about it before. There's so many different aspects to mouth guards. And as you said, we haven't even touched on instrumented mouth guards or the directed 3D printed mouth guards yet.
Yeah, it's a big topic, but I'm glad we've managed to get that one out of the way, because like I said, there's lots of forums, people asking the same questions. So hopefully now people won't have to ask those sort of questions and they can get all the answers just from listening to this pod.
Get all the answers to life, just listen to this podcast. that's the way we're going to roll anymore.
Any answers. We might have to start a wee, just like a text in and John can answer. Do you know how in the newspapers it used to be called Dear Deirdre?
Dear Deirdre, that's right. Yeah.
Maybe do a Dear Johnny Boy, and then we can get the guests, so we can get people to ask.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they want my advice
like,
on a lot of things. No one
Maybe we could start that. Maybe we could start saying, if you've got a question, one life question for John, what would it be? I think it's a great guess.
We might trial it in Dusseldorf and see how we get on.
Yeah. Although if you're asking them live, then the answers could be. Don't know how we're going to censor them.
Yeah, we just have to make sure we're fairly quiet until we've got our work done. Cool. Right. Great chatting as always, Umar.
As always, my friend.
We're getting back into these regular podcasts. I think we're back on track after our summer of ups and downs.
Yes. The future looks bright. The future will be powered by Philips and fueled by Ionate Sport.
Getting with the program.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Until the next time.
Okay, my friend. We'll chat soon.
Chat soon.